in his frames, different phrases that come with it. And you might have even heard of a famous theory that has his name as well. But, you know, his expressionistic paintings really make me feel like, you know, I'm always grabbing something more in them. There's always little characters, little things. And it really gives me a hope, you know, to live life to the fullest every moment I can. And why don't we talk to Gregory a bit and get a little insight on his work? So Gregory, I guess I can start with maybe asking you a few questions and then we'll get into the work.
Sure. Why not?
So I know, you know, tell us a little bit about how your interest in art began. So I know you've kind of got a different story than most artists who had formed.
Well, I always hated art when I was in elementary school, and I failed 8th grade art. I always thought it was just too femmed out, you know. And when we took art appreciation in kindergarten, we actually took art appreciation, and all I ever saw were photorealistic paintings like Dalbert's The Blue Boy, you know, and that never appealed to me. And it wasn't until I was in my junior year of college, I was visiting Europe. My parents thought it'd be good for me to tour the continent over there. And remember, my father worked in a steel mill. So first stop was Amsterdam. I was there for 3 weeks with nothing to do, walking the streets. I saw a sign on a telephone pole saying Van Gogh showing at the Stedelijk. I never saw Van Gogh before, so I figured, I've heard of him. I'll go see what this guy is doing. And as soon as I saw that, I said, you're allowed to paint like that? It doesn't have to be realistic. You can paint with that energy, with those distorted colors and everything. That was me. That really appealed to me. And I just found a way in the back of my brain that I knew I could paint whatever I damn well wanted to start. But I was doing well in physics and math, and I figured I'll keep doing that until I eventually get sick of it, and then I'll drop out and start painting. And eventually that happened after I became a tenured associate professor of mathematics. Got sick of that after my sabbatical leave, visiting the University of Chicago. I realized that, no, I don't want to do this for another 40 years or 35 years or whatever. So then I remembered, hey, I can paint. So I quit my job at the University of Waterloo, about 80 miles west of Toronto, moved on to Dallas and taught myself how to paint, and eventually developed this technique of painting with fluid acrylic paints and knives. Although I use a brush to paint text and music on the frames, that's painted on with brush, but most of the painted image is done with knives. So that, in a nutshell, is how I got to essentially where I am now.
Yeah, and when you, I know you moved away from brush to
Right.
knife and more of a Jackson Pollock style of painting. I guess, how did that come about? And, you know, tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, when I first started painting, I was with a brush. That was in September 1981. After doing a few paintings for a few months, I went around the Dallas galleries, saw everybody's painting with a brush. They've been doing it at least 20 years. They're way ahead of me. There's no way I'm ever going to catch up to them. I got to find something that's more me. And I happened to come across a book at Half Price Books in Dallas the day after Christmas on knife painting. So I bought that book, like a good mathematician, I worked through and did all the exercises, and I realized knife painting is the way for me to go. I really had an affinity for that. I don't know, you wouldn't say it's exactly like finger painting, but it's almost a bit more like that than using a brush. So I painted with a knife with oil paints for about beginning in January of '82 through August of '83. And that's when I couldn't keep up, well, couldn't afford any more painting with oils at that point. So I switched to acrylics, and using acrylics out of tube, you know, they dry fast. So I would always add retarder to them. And then nobody could keep up with my demand for acrylic retarder. So I had to find some other way to use acrylic paints. Unfortunately, I saw a documentary on PBS about Pollock, and he was pouring paint. I figured that's what I'll do. I'll water down my paints. I'll start pouring them, spreading them around with a knife, and see what happens. And then that was it. That just fit me like a glove. And I just had to refine it and develop it further and further, and that's what I did.
Was that kind of like an aha moment? Like, I've got I think I can move on with this and I can be pretty exceptional with, art?
Uh, I wouldn't say I thought that I was going to be exceptional at it, but I said, this is me, this is what I want to do. At no point do I really think that I don't know if I can answer that question really, if I felt that this is going to change the art world,
Yeah, no, I understand.
I thought but I thought I could do stuff that was very different than what everybody else was doing. Whether or not that's going to be valuable to the art history and art other artists is open to questions, ongoing process. But I love it, and I do it whether everybody said, hey, that's shit, you shouldn't be doing that, go back and do mathematics. In fact, I am doing mathematics still, but I'm spending more of my time on painting.
Yeah, and why don't we go a little bit into this piece here? Tell us, the audience, a little bit about it. What the meanings behind it, what the frame, I think there are lyrics on this one, if I'm right, or notes.
Yeah, no.
Song notes. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about this piece.
In the mid 80s, I came across the idea that I wanted to do paintings that convey being kicked around and bounced around in life. A lot of people, everybody. And I wanted to represent that artistically, and what came to mind was the idea of doing pinball paintings. And I knew how to do the painting, putting in the pins and springs and like, but I could never figure out the shooting device. Devices I tried to build in the 80s never worked. It wasn't until like 1996 when my wife and I moved out here to Santa Fe that I was at Walgreens looking at the toys, and I saw they had one of these handheld pneumatic shooters that would shoot like a ping pong ball out of a tube. You squeeze it, air compression, pop it out. And I figured, hey, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build pinball paintings so there's a funnel 10 feet regulation basketball height above the floor, a tube coming on the funnel into the top of the painting, and you take this handheld shooter and you shoot one of these little pinballs out of that into the funnel, and that's how the game begins. So then I think it was 97, I did my first pinball painting. And the first two, in fact, three, this was originally one of the funnel paintings. But then this was originally done in 98. It was like in 2002, I realized, hey, not everybody's got 10, 11 foot ceilings in their house. So they're not going to be able to accommodate paintings like this. So you have to find some way to fit this into an 8-foot ceiling. And if you try to take the funnel approach, it looks like hell. It looks terrible. So that's when I was able to devise a side shooter here. And what you do, you take your little pinball and you pull down the shooter mechanism until the breech opens up. You put the pinball in there, and now you don't do it to the back.
It reminds me of The Price is Right, that Plinko game. Have you ever seen that?
I never saw the Japanese pinball games. Everybody tells me about them. But that wasn't the motivation. The motivation, like I say, is the idea of getting bounced around and kicked around in life. And every image for a pinball painting has to deal with an event of that nature. Here, we're dealing with a gambling addiction, which is big in Mexico. All these little icons are different things you bet upon. You got poker chips on the top of the painting. Off in the distance is the ubiquitous casino that we have in Mexico, and now it seems to be everywhere. And so that's the event around life. And the music on the frame is Beethoven's Rage Over a Lost Penny, because you're always losing your money, so you're really pissed off. So the music ties in with the imagery. And that's always the case with the music. It always bears some relation to the imagery. More about that later in another painting that I wanted me to discuss. Yeah.
And do you listen to Beethoven or something similar while you're painting when you're doing the
I always listen to music, but I don't like listen to this piece over and over again.
Okay. Yeah.
You hear it once in the course of the days and days you're painting, listening to all sorts of other things.
I've also always noticed when you look closer to your paintings, you always find little things, whether it's little people, villages, homes, almost a setting within a setting. Is that, how do you explore that, or how did you start, almost putting stories within a story of the painting?
I don't know, I've always been a narrative painter, and so I'm always trying to represent stories in the paintings. And I discovered in the 80s that I couldn't really convey the whole story, and that's what led to putting text on the frames, where you could then embellish the story that starts like in the painting on the frame and give the the whole story. Yeah. But here, I mean, like you say, there are small things like the cemetery you can barely see, and the car parked in the cemetery, out in the middle of nowhere here on the mesa here. There's a 7-Eleven or your Allsups or any kind of convenience store in the middle of nowhere. There's animals around. Always, whenever the landscapes, almost always there'll be animals. There'll always be an airplane. There's an airplane over here. Everything after 1990, except for 1 or 2 paintings, has an airplane in it.
Are you someone who's into aviation or flying at all, or?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think I did that because where I lived, one of the reasons, when I first started painting in Dallas was at the end of the runway for Dallas Love Field. So every morning, 6 o'clock, the jets would start and you'd see them flying over your main street I lived on. So I always saw airplanes. And here in Santa Fe, whenever you look up in the sky, if you wait a few minutes to see a plane go floating by, it's kind of like indicative of the times we're at. I mean, you never see an airplane in El Greco or a Van Gogh either. So when people say, "Oh, this stuff is just like Van Gogh," I say, "Yeah, you never put an airplane in." Well, no, I always put planets in, and that to remind you that just beyond this thin veil of atmosphere are trillions and trillions of miles of space. And that ties into my background as a studying in the large-scale structure of the universe. That's what I did as a mathematician.
And you're in New Mexico now, right?
Right, yeah.
In Taos, right?
What's that?
Taos, correct?
No, Santa Fe.
Oh, Santa Fe, okay. Yeah, I feel like I've had some other artists move to Santa Fe. Do you feel more creative there, or just kind of, what about the desert kind of captured you?
My wife and I originally thought that, hey, we moved to Santa Fe, we're tired of the Dallas art scene. We've been in almost all the galleries there, and there's really not much more to do gallery-wise in Santa Fe. Let's go to, not in Santa Fe, in Dallas.
Yeah.
And, well, there are a lot of collectors in Dallas, sure, but we got tired of the Dallas art scene and figured let's go to Santa Fe. It's supposedly a strong market for art. When we got here, I discovered nobody would show my work. Absolutely no one will touch my stuff. So that's why I eventually opened this gallery here after my wife died to exhibit my work. And it was kind of discouraging that nobody would show my work, but it gave me time to do a lot more work. So I was able to build up an enormous inventory of paintings.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, I guess, your work really resonates with people and creates emotion. I guess, is there something you want to, paint a message for them when they're looking at the work, or is it kind of, for the viewer's perception?
Well, I like them the energy, I think appeals to a lot of people. The energy, the emotion, the vibrancy, want to make people to feel alive, that you're alive for a finite amount of time. And eventually you're going to end up over here in the cemetery. Like that's the pinball game. You start out with a bang, you come out of the darkness, you bounce around, you kick around the world, and eventually you end up in this cup in the ground below the painting. It's like that everybody's life is depicted in the pinball game. And everybody should know that you only got a finite amount of time, so don't waste it. The darkness is always waiting up there, the darkness of eternity, just beyond the sky there. And that's one thing I want to get people to think about their own ephemerality and what are you going to do with your life.
Oh, I love that. And I love the reference with the pinball.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. I was just bringing you back on the screen. And I guess, can you show, are we going to move on to other pieces or do we?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
The piece we want to discuss.
Yeah.
So, okay. Unplug this thing so I don't.
No worries.
This device here.
And all these works are available, correct?
Yes, that's very good.
So all the works are available, guys. If you need any more information, info@bgartdealings.com. or you can write in the message and we can answer any questions.
Does the whole text appear in there?
Yeah, it's appearing.
Yeah, okay.
So is this a newer piece? I don't think I've seen too many with text in the paintings.
Yeah, this is part of my graffiti series of paintings. I always hated graffiti and I see in the world because it's usually trite and I hate the idea of painting on somebody's building, you know. Is this thing level? Does the image look crooked to you?
It's a little crooked, but it's okay. It's just a little tilt. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, that's better?
A little better, yeah. We can
make it perfectly level. I hear about shims if that's necessary.
That's oh, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
We can get it.
Okay. So yeah, I wouldn't want anybody spray painting crap on my garage or inside of my gallery or anything. So that's why I'm kind of upset about graffiti. I think it does belong in a gallery. And this is where I paint graffiti over my own paintings. So I'm like defacing the painting. Like, you know, whenever you put text on a painting, people always talk to you. Well, they don't give a crap about the painting, but if you show somebody words, they stop and look at the words. So it's one way I get people to look at a painting. And this was motivated by one of the many attempts by the police made to arrest my father on outstanding warrant. They finally got him for making criminally harassing phone calls. Not like he's a loan shark or anything. He was, you know, the calls were generated. He hates televangelists.
Oh, okay.
Robert Tilton was running all these ads on TV and gave out an 800 number. And you give my father an 800 number, and he's just going to start calling it. And called them night and day, months on end. And they put a warrant out for his arrest for harassing them. And this is like one of the first times that the police came down. My father said, "Hey, cops are knocking on your door. You don't have to answer. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you've got to answer the door, but somebody pounds on them. And if they say they're the police, who's going to believe them? Anybody could say they're the police. So never answer the door, especially if you think there's a warrant out for you." So that's essentially what this deals with. The cops are at the door banging at it. And my pa's taken off and hiding.
I used to love making crank calls as a kid. I've never heard of anyone getting arrested for it. So that's.
You never made that many crank calls like my father did. Like I say, months on end, yeah, he would be making calls to Robert Tilton's people, harassing them. And eventually, Tilton was arrested for tax evasion. And well, I should just finish the story. My father, they moved on to Houston. My father, you know, when you change your address, you got to go and tell the motor vehicle people that you've done so. And the problem is when you do that, the first thing they do is they check if there's any warrants for your arrest. And they found one for my pa and they arrested him. And threw him in jail. My mom called me, said, "Pa's in jail. I got to get $5,000 bail. You call in some of your attorney friends. You're going to have to go to court in Fort Worth next week." So my pa, he was in the Gogh for 6 hours. Because when my mom came back with the money, they couldn't find out where my pa was. They didn't know what jail they moved him to. So they jerked him around for 6 hours. He was locked up.
Oh, wow.
So the next day he has to call the courthouse to find out when his date is for the hearing. And the court tells him the warrant expired the day before you were arrested. You're not arrested. So the damn cops arrested him on a warrant that expired. So, but I told my pa, I mean, we should go after these guys, you know, but my pa was just happy to get out of the Gogh. And then 2 weeks later, Tilton was arrested for a tax.
Oh, man. Your dad was quite the outlaw.
Yeah.
And the one thing about this piece is it's showing the inside as if, you know, you were almost hearing that knock as a kid type thing, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
It's relevant to, you know, events that have been going on in the past summer, you know, with the police, no-knock warrants and stuff, and what's it, Louisville, Louisville, where that one woman was shot and killed.
Yeah, there's Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been a lot of, I wouldn't say it's the best time to be a police officer for sure.
No, yeah.
Have you been, with everything going on this year, have you felt pretty creative and stayed very creative?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been great.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing I wanted to kind of know was, I know I learned a little bit about your influencers. Can you speak on your influencers in art and what they gave to your progression and style as an artist?
Just Van Gogh, and then Pollock, seeing him doing the poured paint. And I like Magritte because of his absurdist view of the world, and he adds mystery. Look at Magritte, it's mysterious. Reminds you that the world and existence are really quite incomprehensible. We try to make sense out of it as best we can as mathematicians and physicists, but it's still quite enigmatic. And that comes across to me in Magritte's work. So I say those are the three guys that influenced me: Van Gogh, Pollock, and Magritte.
That's great. And what I was going to say is I was kind of wondering, because I did something similar in college. I was biomedical engineering, and then decided to actually tell my parents that I was going to switch majors.
Yeah.
And they weren't as happy with me. But what was it like to know when you found out from a friend that your PhD thesis was put into it as a theory?
Oh, that was a real thrill. That was great, Christ almighty. Because, I mean, most physicists and mathematicians work their whole life in the business without ever getting something like that. There's not that many people that have a theory named after them,
Yeah.
And, I was only doing it for 7 years, and then the theory that I developed and became celebrated, I did when I was like 22. It wasn't my PhD thesis. And it was quite a thrill to know that, and it's still very popular. I mean, every day I check up how many sites are to the paper, and now it's like 1,814 since 2010.
Oh, wow.
So it went up almost like one a day.
That's great.
Unbelievable.
And then do you keep up with some of your physics and math buddies from school and from teaching?
I don't keep up with them, but I'm doing physics. I'm still doing physics.
Yeah.
Ever since I found out my stuff was valuable, I figured, I'm not going to let these kids work on that by themselves. I know more about the basic structure of the equations than anybody. So what I work on is not like the applications of the theory, but in the structure of possible field equations and obtaining different types of equations. And that seems to be my niche. That's what I enjoy doing the most. And that's I can get right back into that right at being very competitive, because not many people are that conversant with constructing the basic field equations.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then do you want to move on to the next piece?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on to another one here.
We got more text here. So is this space like kind of a gallery space for you where you can show people work, or is
It's
it
just a gallery.
Oh, it's gallery.
Yeah, right. Can you get the whole painting in there? Should I move it back further? Or?
A little further, but we can also show it in our catalog as well.
Right, yes. Is it no?
That's fine.
The whole thing?
Yeah, that's good. And I like seeing the frame.
Right.
Is this one of the, tell us a little bit about this painting.
Right, this is on the frame, begins with a discussion of our ephemerality and eventually, one thing I mentioned earlier that I was a narrative painter, and you often can't tell the whole story in the image, so you embellish it on the frame. And eventually that evolved to the point where the image on the painting was almost inconsequential. It's just some starting point for a text that deals with all sorts of crazy things. And this text here deals with it, discusses our finite life and discusses the universe and the possible future history of the universe. Will it collapse down to a point? Will it reemerge? Those type of things are discussed on the frame here. And after discussing infinity for a while, I start discussing the mathematical aspects of infinity, the various, well, there's more than just one notion of infinity in mathematics. There are an infinite number of infinities, and it can be arranged, well, some of them can be arranged in ascending order. Even though each one's infinite, they're bigger infinities than just the usual infinity most people are familiar with from numbers.
And when you start your paintings, I know you put, all the paint down like Pollock used to, and things, and use a knife. Are you working from obviously the background to the foreground when you're working these pieces as far as colors?
For this painting, you start out with the canvas and you just draw in where there's some ocean, where the hillside is, where the path is, where the water line is here, and then another little line there for a foreground landscape. And that's all that I would draw on the canvas, just those lines. And then I would start pouring paint in. Different values of orange would be painted poured in here. Different value of gray would be poured in where the clouds are going to be. Then I knife those in. Then after doing the sky, I would paint in the hillside, just the landmass, not the trees and shrubs. I mean, just paint in the underlying landmass. You can see vestiges of here and there. That would be painted in along with the path. Paint in the water, paint in this orange in the same manner you painted in sky, and then you put in this, and that would be the first coat of paint. Sit around and let it dry. Then I would come back and start painting in shrubbery. There's all sorts of shrubbery under here, but you can't see, it's all covered up by other stuff, but nevertheless, I cover this whole thing with shrubs, like this blue spruce here, and here's a cypress there. This whole area is covered with things like that. And when the shrubs dry, I put in paint in the tree trunks, these twisty trees, and the tall trees. I put the foliage in on those. And then I start working here on this foreground with the shrubbery, and then tall trees, and then I paint in all these tombstones. I don't know, maybe I might paint the tombstones in even before I paint in the little trees on the hillside. I'll paint in the tombstones after I paint the shrubbery on the hillsides, yeah.
And I've never, I've seen a lot of artists and works. I've never seen anyone do intricate frames like you, where they either tell a theory, or there's sheet music, or almost tell a story of the piece. Have you seen anyone else do that before?
You think of the outsider artists, they don't do elaborate frames, but they put text on the frames. Like Howard Finster, they usually put biblical things, or some text dealing with his life, or when he was born, or something like that. But nothing to this extent, it would, because it does go, like I say, it goes onto the sides. I didn't see that just now. It goes on the side, the text. It goes on the top. That's why you have the mirror. The text is on the top. You read it with the mirror. It's written backwards and upside down, and it goes onto the bottom of the frame. You use the mirror to read it there. So I cover everything with text. That can be viewed by the public. Of course, I don't put it on the back.
No, it's truly amazing work.
A lot of people regarded the text as distracting. I get a lot of that, and that's what led me into putting doors on some text frames, where the door covers just the text. Sometimes it'll be a single door mounted on the left. Sometimes a double door mounted on both sides, cut so that you could open it up and swing it out to hide the text. But I didn't do, I don't know how many, about 20 or 30 of them maybe. But I don't do it anymore. It's too much work. Now with the arthritis, it's too much to paint the text.
And
do that. Occasionally I will do paint text or music, but not like I used to.
Do you mind, is there any way possible to bring the camera a little closer to see the textures of the paint and things?
Well, that's not, yes. Want to go down the middle, and you want to go toward the text, or?
Yeah, the middle, and then, yeah, it's so nice to see the details on the canvas. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's one of the benefits of this fluid painting technique, is that you get a rich microscopic structure developing in the surface, where paints start mixing and forming eddies and swirls. You get little cuffs of paint, stuff that you could never paint by your brush without spending a prolonged period of time trying to accomplish it. And here you just get it serendipitously, and just a knife stroke across the paint. You look at and see, well, you see all this stuff. And the question is, do you want to keep it, or do you want to put another knife stroke across it and get something else?
Yeah, I think the knife just really elevates, the textures, but also the feel, and, seeing different works by artists that use knives versus paint. I really think it really gets across a lot more of the texture and things.
Yeah. I mean, usually if you think of knife paintings, you think of a pastel, heavy surface. This is smooth. You can rub your hand across it. It's very flat because the paint is fluid. It dries very smoothly. It levels out on the surface. So this isn't an abrasive type of surface you're looking at. It's really quite smooth.
Yeah, I always thought it's amazing how you have the backgrounds and foregrounds, and it just is fully smooth. It's not layered like some other people's pieces, and you can see where they started and ended. Yours is just kind of fluid throughout.
Yes, thank you. There's a squirrel there. Just notice that squirrel.
Yeah, every time we've shown your work at any fair or anything throughout the weekend or throughout the show, I notice something new every day.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same for you, but.
Yeah. But here, now that you're looking closer, you can see perhaps in this tree, the way the paint has all this rich microscopic, these thin little veins of paint, like feathery, impossible to try to paint something there with a brush. But here, life, it just in fluid paint, it just happens. Yeah. Should I move back to the text?
Yeah. Let's move back and maybe to the next one.
Okay.
You don't have any of the paintings with the kind of secret doors and stuff, do you? I know.
I have one.
One, okay.
Yeah. I can show that. Mathematical theory of the afterlife. Is that fitting in the frame there?
Yeah, we can see it. Okay.
It's a painting that came up with shortly after my wife died. She died in August of 2017. This is from, a year later, October of 2018. We should try to construct mathematically where these things of heaven and hell and all that could possibly reside, and come up with a mathematical formulation that kind of relates to conventional Christian ideas, but makes it far more precise and explains why you don't see heaven here on earth, and why you don't see hell on earth, and why the soul doesn't maintain on earth. It all exists in another space, a space beyond our own physical space that is tied to us. And this discusses the mathematics of it. Here we have a landmass here, the green, flowing across this way. And if you subtract the wheel before that, you see the blue sky like heaven. And down here, for some reason, there's this diabolical oranges and yellows down here. That's meant to be the traditional view of hell and earth dividing the two. Well, it doesn't really happen that way, I don't know if I should be so. No, that's not the way it really is, but I have the correct expression formulation up here on the frame. And once again, the text goes on the sides, top and bottom. And it is the text, the mathematics is aimed at the layperson so that a person who has gone to high school could understand what I'm talking about for the most part.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you almost get a mathematics lesson while you're looking at the painting at the same time.
Right.
I mean, mathematics and physics have always, been an influence on your painting, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I may not consciously think about it, but unconsciously it must be guiding my compositions. Mm.
Yeah, there was someone, I was speaking to an artist the other day who was talking about, he's a mathematician, but now artist. And he was talking about how, for some reason, mathematicians and physicists see, religion a little differently and life and death differently. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Uh, well, most of them I know are kind of like atheists.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. You're either atheist or.
Though Einstein was a very religious fellow. I know a lot of Jewish mathematicians that maintain their Jewish faith, haven't swayed or wavered. So, but it seems like uh, those that were brought up in Christian or whatever, that they become more atheistic, and not me. No, I'm not traditional religion type of person, but I believe that there is, at least mathematically, it's conceivable to me. I have a formulation here. It's coming to me, and I know maybe everybody comes up with their own religion that gives them some type of solace in their dealing with their ephemerality. Or you can take it off the shelf. I'll just go with Catholicism, or but some people construct their own worldview, and that's essentially what I've done here and try to explain in this painting.
Yeah, and what would you tell to artists out there? You've kind of succeeded as you have, your pieces in museums, but you've also sold a good amount to collectors and through galleries. So you kind of got the best of both worlds.
Yes, right.
Where, a lot of times it's taught that you either go kind of the museum route or you go where the money comes in on the, traditional or kind of that brand of painting. I guess what insight could you give to artists that, would like to enjoy kind of the cake and eat it too?
I think you have to be insane, really.
Okay.
Succeed as an artist, it's got to be a disease. You're obsessed with painting. You're obsessed with some aspect of the art world that you just can't live without doing. And you're hoping that you can achieve some kind of financial success to some extent. I don't know whether, like you say, the museum route or the commercial route, but you want some type of reinforcement to enable you to just do your art full time all the time. And that's what I've been lucky enough to do, because when I was a mathematician, I saved up all my money so that when I dropped out, I had this nest egg developed so I could go and spend 3 years developing as an artist without selling anything. And I didn't have to wait 3 years. I sold something after 2 years, and then started getting sales and shows, and was able to just maintain survival status as an artist without ever having to work. And that's one way of doing it. Trying, if you want to be an artist, can you just hold off for a while and get yourself a big chunk of money so that you can then drop out of the workday world and just do your thing. And I know some people say, I'm an artist, but I really like to have my day job. It's fun to go to work, and that's bullshit. Can you imagine Picasso saying, oh shit, I wish I had a job where I went there and someone bussing tables and somebody told me what to do, instead of painting all day and making this money and going to fine restaurants and whores and the like, who are you kidding? I mean, if you're succeeding as an artist, why would you want to have a day job? Go to some other job. Art should be the thing to give you the greatest pleasure you can imagine. Well, that's one thing that this deals with, is trying to explain why the afterlife could possibly exist, that there is a good reason for believing it. It comes with pleasure in that, like if you're a little kid and somebody tells you, you're prepubescent, tells you that your body's going to change and you're going to be able to experience incredible pleasure like you've never had before. And then, as a kid, you may say, like, more pleasurable than ice cream? What are you talking? No, it's more pleasurable than ice cream. It's unbelievable. Your body's going to change and this can happen. You wouldn't believe it. But then you go through puberty, you experience this pleasure, you think, what the hell, where did that come from? How is that possible? So there is this transformative event just because of the way your body evolves. So that leads you to think that maybe there is another transformative event in the future when you die, that there is a possibility that there's another state you can pass into. If you did it once in life, maybe it can happen again. And that's how like this painting begins.
Could we see a little closer on the frame to the text, just to give everyone reference?
Oh, well, the sexuality is discussed up there.
I love ice cream, so I sure hope all that's correct.
Yeah.
I don't know what's better.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have yogurt land in New Mexico, but.
Okay, drink of water here.
Okay. As everyone can see, you can see the wording and everything on the frames now, and really get the details of the painting and how beautiful use of colors and everything else.
Now there were 3 other paintings Ohm wanted me to go to. Are we fixed for time?
Yeah, I know. Let's see a couple more. I did have a question from someone what the writing was about. I think you went over that, but if you could explain what the writing about on this one was again.
Well, let's see. It starts out with trying to figure out how losing your spouse is traumatic, provided you love them. If not, it's like, thank God. No, I had the misfortune of loving my wife, so it was and still is miserable. So I had to kind of come up with some kind of resolution, and that's what this deals with here. And then I tried to explain how we have this possibility of this metamorphosis upon death in view of a previous metamorphosis with passing through puberty. And I think that I discussed all that kind of stuff until we start getting the mathematics over here at work. It's kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with this. What was that book by Abbott? Flatland. Remember that book, Flatland by Abbott, where people with little rectangles and polygons live in a plane, and all of a sudden a sphere appears, a circle appears, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then disappears. That's because the flatland existed inside a bigger space, and objects in the bigger space could pass through it, and when they did, then that's how they manifest themselves. It's something that appears, gets bigger, and shrinks and disappears. And that is kind of like a flatland idea, that our universe is like the flatland plane inside a larger enveloping universe. And the portal that takes us from our universe into the enveloping universe is through our brain. And our brain, our soul, is connected to our brain, but not in the space we live, but in the extended enveloping space. That's why you never can see your soul in the universe we're in, because it's in the enveloping universe. And that's where I discuss and try to discuss it in here, make it more precise.
And how long does a frame normally take you? And the audience thanked you for that answer, by the way.
It would take me maybe 3 days to paint.
3 days, okay.
4 days. Yeah, because I mean, 6 hours a day painting it, you get started. The hardest part is painting that top part here and this part there. Once you finish those, then because to paint that, the frame lays horizontally. I have to crawl underneath and get inside the frame so that I can paint the text from inside the frame.
Oh.
That's miserable, The only other way to get around that is when the frame is laying flat, you stand behind it. So you're standing over here and you're writing everything backwards and upside down across. And I do that a lot too. But sometimes it goes faster if you can get inside, and that's just miserable.
Well, let's see a couple more pieces before we have to go.
Right. There's a pipe bomb piece over here.
Yeah, some of your favorite. Yeah.
Is that visible there?
Yep. We got the whole thing.
Pipe bomb for spring. The pipe bomb is S-shaped, curves around like this, S for spring. And the frame discusses this poor little guy walking through the beautiful floral displays and the flowering trees, and he's feeling miserable. And I try to cheer him up on the frame, and eventually shows no hope or desire to enjoy life. So that's when I say, okay, that's it. I've had enough of you. If you feel so miserable, why don't you kill yourself? Here's there's a fuse, light it and snuff it, you know? In the pipe bomb paintings, I'm like a devil's advocate. I always try to encourage people to enjoy life and be happy, but if not, I just get sick of them and I want to crush them. And that's what occurs in this one. I'm like the Dr. Kevorkian of the art world. Everybody knows that nothing's certain in life but death or taxes. You have a lot of people to help you with your taxes, but you need somebody to help you with your death. And that's where I come in with these pipe bombs to help you make it into the enveloping universe that's discussed on the previous frame.
I heard through the grapevine that you used to put fireworks in them.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, little firecrackers, and you could light them and they would explode. They wouldn't blow up the pipe. I mean, it's very hard to blow up a pipe. You need really explosives to do that. But I stopped doing that after 9/11 because it became problematic to ship them. Although I have a dealer in New York, Kadori Azera, an Iranian Muslim. And after 9/11, I was still shipping him pipe bombs with firecrackers in it. And they all got through, you know, made it right across onto Manhattan. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if you x-rayed the box, you see it's a pipe bomb from the box. Yeah, so.
And when you first started painting, I mean, did you paint these scenic type story type scenes, or what was your first things you painted? You know, just starting out.
In interiors, I did a lot. The 19th century, or like you think of Munch, the deathbed scene paintings, did cheery things like that, and other things involving people in interiors, you know. And I just got to the landscapes because it seemed like landscapes that could be freer with the knife and do more interesting knife work, like here with the foliage ripping around in the sky, ripping through there, and all these eddies and swirls in the paint. It seems like the landscape evinces the nature of my painting better than trying to paint a restricted little room, sort of small walls and everything else.
And we got another question from the audience. Can you tell us more about the layering in your technique? I understand there are disguised layers beneath your final image.
Yes, I maybe want to show you this next doored piece.
Okay, perfect.
Let me show you this doored piece here. Now, I don't think they have an image. Four large doors. Do you see most of them? There's one.
Yeah, we see them pretty good.
In the bottom ones?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, okay. So this is a painting for somebody who wants to tell their friends they're really into minimalism, but they're closet expressionists. Okay? It's called Deconstructing a Sexscape, and we'll go both ways on it. And there you have a nice, kind of like a still life. There's a landscape here. It's kind of goofy. Open up the next door, and the flowers are all gone. You open up the next door, and all the tall trees are gone. You can see human forms. And then you open up this door, and you see how it begins. Two people in the desert.
Wow, love that.
And it shows the evolution. It starts like this. Then you put the shrubbery on here. I paint the shrubs on. I put the planets in. put the shadows on the shrubs here and shrub on the mesa. Then the next one, I put in all the tall trees and their shadows. Then I finish off, also crepe myrtles are put in. And then you finish by putting in flowers, and there are all sorts of people engaged in sexual activity throughout the whole painting. They're very tiny.
And are those 4 different panels, or those one big canvas?
Paint this 4 times.
Okay.
3 times, that one twice, and that one once. Now, another thing I do of similar nature is I would take the painting and I'd photograph it at each stage. And then I would put the photos on the frame under plexiglass. So you could, they'd be like satellites floating around the main image. And that would show you what the process was. And that would be more detailed. That would show every step. Here, from going from here to there, a lot was done. I would paint on the shrubs, I paint on the shadows, I put in the planets, I put in the stars. So that's more than just doing one thing. It's like doing 4 or 5 things. So you can show it, the doors open, closed, whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for a viewer or collector, I mean, how are they perceived with the doors? And what got you started using the doors?
Well, the reason I got indoors is because, like I told you,
the frames
were such that the doors covered the text.
Yeah.
We're confused by all this text, you know? Some people were, not me, some people were. So I had to try to come up with some way of obfuscating the text. And fortunately, I had a show, a friend of mine, I had a show in Brussels, Belgium in 1989, January of 89. And my dealer there said, I'm gonna take you up to Ghent. We're gonna tour the churches there, look at the old altar pieces and paintings. And I figured, okay, why not? And you see these religious paintings in which there are doors. And for the religious painting, the doors are closed. You see religious scenes painted on them. And then when you open up the doors, there's another religion scene here and religion painted on the other sides of the doors. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea that that's what I need to hide the text. I put doors on where the doors just cover the text that's on the frame and not the painted image. Mm. So that's what got me into the doors. The idea there to obfuscate text, obfuscate music that I have on the frame, and the doors also gave me a way to even put more text on, because when you put a door on, you can paint on the door frame on this side. So you have text around the painting, and then you'd have the text on the door too. So it gave me a way to double the amount of text. So it was a win-win for me. For the people seeing text, the doors would close and hide it, and then people who love text open the doors and see even more text everywhere.
Yeah, I like the text, but I like these hidden doors as well. Shows how you're always changing. And I guess, did you want to show us one more before we have to go, or?
Oh yeah, we can show you. There's one.
Okay.
Painting here. Is that painting in the visible?
Yep. Yeah.
What got me into music? I mean, when I used to be a mathematician, I would never listen to classical music. I always listened to rock. And when I was a mathematician when I was about 33. And when I started painting down in Dallas, all of a sudden, I was trying to find some station on the radio to listen to. I came across a classical station. I started listening to it, and I couldn't stop. Classical music became my lifeblood. I had to listen to that when I'm painting. I always have to have classical music on. And my wife, I met her in '89. She had a PhD in music history and played the piano. So in an attempt to make me even more desirable to her, I thought, well, maybe there's some way I can incorporate her music knowledge with my love for music into artwork. And that was through putting scores on the frames of music that was programmatic, that is music that calls forth imagery. Here we have Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, even though he didn't name it Moonlight Sonata, it was some German poet, I think, really came up with the name. It stuck. Still, everybody regards the Moonlight Sonata as having something to do with moonlight. So I paint a moonlit image at night, and I put the Beethoven's music, so it's like two different interpretations of a nocturnal landscape.
Love it.
Yeah, but even if you don't, you can't look at that note and hear it. I mean, I can tell you what that note is, but I can't hear it in my head. It's the G
Okay.
above the middle C, like a musician can. But it's just interesting iconography. Like you look at this stream of notes and you realize somebody can memorize that. Musicians can just memorize this whole thing, get it into their brain and play that without having to look at these notes, this beautiful string of symbols. It's mind-boggling. Like you read a passage in a book, and you can't back an hour later and recite it to anybody. Well, so
No, I mean,
it can, do this with the music. It's just mind-boggling how the brain can deal with music and the role that music plays in life. That's also in the mathematical theory of the afterlife. There must be some deeper significance to music than just some pleasant little notes. It must appeal to our subconscious, must appeal to, you often hear said, your soul. That it's the language of your soul. That you have an innate understanding and appreciation of music.
and do you think we'll, when this is all over, that we'll have a renaissance almost of music and art? Like there was, in the 10s and 20s, the New Deal and things.
I don't know.
Okay.
Um,
Well, Gregory, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I love all the work. Obviously, you guys can find more of his work on bgartdealings.com or at your website's Gregory Horndeski Studio. Is that correct? Or
Oh, no, it's HorndeskiContemporary.com.
HorndeskiContemporary.com. And anything you'd like to leave the audience with, Gregory, before we go?
Enjoy your life, don't waste it. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I feel like you are someone that enjoys your life, and I definitely want to follow more in those steps.
Unbelievable. Every day, just so incredible.
Yeah.
Most people don't have the good fortune to have to be able to live a life like I do, where I get to do exactly what I want to do. Most people have to go out, I got to go do this job or I got to do that or like it. I don't have to do anything except what I want to do. And it's a great life to have like that. And unfortunately, most people can't lead that type of existence. Yeah.
I would say that's the epitome of success, is when you can do what you want, when you want it, all the time, and not really answer to anyone.
It's like being a child again. You have your work is what you have the same satisfaction in your work that you had as a child at play. That gives you an idea of what consists of a man's or a person's maturity.
Yeah, and if you think of children, the way they see the world is so different to how adults start seeing the world after, going to a job and doing stuff they don't like.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to come check out your studio next time I'm in Santa Fe.
Absolutely, sure.
But it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and really love your work. It always tells me a different story, so I always like it.
I'm glad you like it. I'm enjoying doing this, trying to explain what I've been trying to do for 39 years now.
Perfect. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. This will also be on YouTube for your viewing pleasure. And thank you, everyone. And thank you, Gregory. And we'll be in touch.